AI is like the BBL for not intellectuals.
We have access to so much information that people think they know things they do not know.
Some of the most successful people are like psychopaths because they're not caught up in the motion of nothing. They can create chaos when being completely disconnected from it.
Men were not raised to be interesting. Like, you just had to show up and have money, and that was like enough. Hey guys, welcome to Too Personal. I'm Joy Taylor. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and follow us on social media at Too Personal Show. We have a really fun show today. My friend 19 Keys is joining us today on Too Personal. He's a thought leader, motivational speaker. He has a really cool mushroom coffee line and a lot to talk about. Make sure you follow him on social media at 19_Keys if you don't already. And I'm very excited to get to that conversation. But first, for this week's rant, a few weeks ago, I was on the Rory and Mal show, and I had been thinking to myself about people keeping their word and how there was a time where your word really mattered. There's a famous line from Scarface when Tony Montana says, "All I've got is my balls and my word." And growing up, people would always quote that movie and say things like, you know, my word matters and you can't speak bad on my name. And people really used to move around like what they said was reflective of what they do. And if your word didn't mean shit, people wouldn't fuck with you. Genuinely, if you were a person that moved around and acted shady, people wouldn't vouch for you. People wouldn't want to do business with you. People wouldn't be friends with you. People wouldn't recommend that you date their friend. And people wouldn't want to be around you or have you in their circles if you moved fucked up. And I mentioned Rory and Mal because we talked about it a little bit, that's a recipe that we have lost. Not that I'm saying you need to emulate Tony Montana from Scarface, but the idea of being a person of your word and the principles that you stand on and the things that you say being quoted to other people and that mattering is a recipe that is completely gone. And I think greed has played a big role in that. Corporate greed specifically, like moving around the world kind of fucked up, treating people bad and still being rewarded for it because you make other people money. Maybe that was always the case in certain circles and everybody didn't have the access to it, and now we do. So we care more about making money than what and how we make money. But I will say it is something that I feel like we should try and find and bring back in some way, because the accountability level for people moving around with no word whatsoever is really crazy to me. And as I get older and as I move into different spaces in business and meet different people around the world, it's harder and harder to get people to vouch for other people because I don't know what their character is. And not saying that every interaction that you have to have with someone has to be character filled. And there are some transactional relationships and there are things that it's just really not that deep. But I do miss the time when I could say like, yo, what is this person about? And they would say they're solid. And that was enough to do everything else that you needed to do with that person. Doesn't mean that you don't get contracts signed. It doesn't mean that you don't ask the right questions. But you know, above all else, your interaction with them isn't going to be fucked up. And that is just not the case anymore. And people do not give a fuck about their reputation. I think there's a limit to how much you can care about what other people think about you. That is important. But not giving a fuck about what other people think about you and keeping your balance in life is based solely on knowing who the fuck you are and what you stand on. It's hard to have people talk shit about you and not respond. It's much easier when you know what the fuck you're about. And it's just very crazy to me on every single level, whether it's front-facing, whether it's interpersonal relationships, it's business relationships. It's just how you interact with friends. Your word should mean some shit to you. You should be able to look someone in the face and say, this is what I'm about, and I stand on that. and have other people around you be able to vouch for you. And that goes a very long way when you move through life. And that is a recipe I just think we need to bring back. If you say some shit or you promise some shit, you say you're gonna do some shit, you commit to somebody, you bring someone into your circle, stand on that shit. Protect those people. Put them fucking first. It is not cool to just be moving around playing the fuck out of people that you say you love or care about. And I really feel like that my word and my balls, I mean, we know nobody has balls anymore, so I'm not even hoping for that coming back. But at least the word part, at least the part where you say, this is my family and I'm gonna fucking protect them, and then be that. It's wild to me that people will lie to their actual family, lie about their actual family, lie in a way that puts their family in danger, and then try and walk around like they're fucking somebody. You don't stand for shit. You can't even trust the person you lay next to. You know how crazy that is? So I really feel like it's something that I'm gonna work on. I feel like it's a recipe that has been lost. I'm having to go through some accountability myself on how much I feel like my word matters and I feel like I move around the world. And that is just something I think we need to start holding each other to a little bit more. Your word and your balls, metaphorically speaking as well. That being said, it's time to talk to our friends, 19 Keys. All right, so excited to have my friend 19 Keys on Too Personal. He's a motivational speaker, thought leader, entrepreneur, founder of Crown Society clothing brand and Supermind Mushroom Coffee. He's also the host of High Level Conversations. 19 Keys, welcome to Too Personal.
Thank you for having me here.
So tell us about your mushrooms.
So the mushrooms, for me, it's a wellness brand. It's a wellness renaissance. I mean, if you will. Everything we do always has a parallel meaning to it, right? I was doing some studies about how the liquor industry lobbied Hollywood basically to become a drink that was connected to social spaces and masculinity, right? And we don't realize how much Hollywood shapes, right, the narrative and our identities of how we see ourselves. But coffee houses, if you go back into ancient Arabia, Africa, Moorish, these were spaces of intellect and renaissance where they had conversations about culture and science, astronomy, and revolutionary ideas would permeate, right? So, you know, a lot of societies were able to have renaissance or revolutions because they had coffee, which was essentially stimulating thought, right? And I thought about that as we try to make shifts in culture, we have to make shifts in our rituals, right? This younger generation is drinking less than any other generation because they're raised on social media and not Hollywood, right? We was in the house watching all those narratives, seeing James Bond talking about the martini, you feel me? And we just thought that these pubs and these bars actually really occurred even through ancient times in history. But that was just the liquor industry being clever, right, to manipulate the narrative to get people to connect it to an identity based on who they are or how they should suppress their emotions in a bottle. So for me, I thought coffee was a natural thing for me to get into. First of all, I love coffee. But more than that, I think we need a cognitive renaissance, right? To where, you know, higher consciousness and intellect and critical thinking and, right, at the same time, you have new sciences and technology emerging. We need to be able to think about these things really thoughtfully. So therefore, we need to be able to have spaces where we come together specifically for that purpose, right? I think that this is exactly what the culture is looking for and society overall needs. So yeah, mushrooms are adaptogenic to where, you know, they help stimulate your brain, right? And they also good for your gut. So not just doing regular coffee, but doing the mushroom coffee, I thought made it more meaningful.
Okay, so when I think of mushrooms, I think of a very specific type of mushroom.
You talking about them
Like
mushrooms.
those mushrooms. I love those mushrooms. But I don't think that's what these mushrooms are.
No.
But some people are going to think that there's like a correlation because obviously when you do mushrooms, it does stimulate your mind.
Yeah.
But I couldn't take those mushrooms and then like go to work.
No, those are mind-altering psychedelic mushrooms.
Correct.
These are adaptogenic nootropic, right? So they stimulate cognitive performance, memory, clarity, right? All of the things that you need if you're having a high-level conversation with somebody. So these are the mushrooms, especially after you pass the age of 25, you have to stimulate the brain differently, right? So this helps regrow like sheath on your neurons, which is essentially saying that electricity can flow from one thought to the other. right? So that you're not getting stuck trying to remember something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm seeing more and more people, right, have a lot of mental health declines, right? A lot of people that are younger and younger are getting dementia and things of that nature. And so in a world that's over distracted, right, and having all this burnout, I thought mushrooms was a natural compound that we should introduce to society at a high level.
And it tastes the same.
It tastes better.
Tastes better.
Yeah, this is the smoothest coffee on the market.
Have you had Turkish coffee?
Yeah, I had Turkish. This is better.
Turkish coffee is crazy.
Shout out to the Turks, though.
I love Turkish coffee. Okay, so I'm really excited to try it. I love coffee also, and I love mushrooms. Although the other kind of mushrooms, I haven't these kind of I haven't had these kind of mushrooms yet.
But when you're not doing those mushrooms, you can do these mushrooms.
Do you do those mushrooms?
Do I do those other mushrooms?
Mhm.
I have before. I had my experiences.
You had your experiences. Did you like it?
I enjoyed it. I think
doing mushrooms is better than drinking.
absolutely. I think almost everything better than drinking.
Do you
Mostly, no. I've had like a little red wine here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but especially as I go into a new age, I think I really only want all my rituals to be cognitive enhancing. I don't want nothing to be cognitive declining. Like I need all my cognition daily. I need to think clearly at all times.
Yeah.
Because when I'm not thinking good, I'm not feeling good, which means I don't even want to talk to people.
Right.
You feel me? So it creates more social disconnection when I'm not feeling good.
Also, alcohol to me, I feel like as I've gotten older, and it's interesting you say that about alcohol and kids not drinking because I definitely grew up in the binge drinking era. So it wasn't even just that drinking was romanticized, like drinking a lot was the thing. Like we used to have drinking competitions.
Like women and wine and things of that nature.
Well,
like,
listen, I do love some wine,
I
but
know.
I'm not.
Who got you to love wine, though?
Who got me wine?
Yeah, who got you to love wine?
Oh, who got me to love wine? I don't know. Wine to me is like, wine is different. Like wine is a real craft. You know, there's an art to making wine. There's a lot of like really good wine is very intentional. There's like a whole science behind it. Not that it makes it like better than drinking other alcohol, but wine is ancient also. So I like wine. Like I will go do a wine tasting, all that. Liquor to me is getting harder as my just body does not appreciate it as much as when I was younger. But I just think I think it's interesting that like the feeling I have after drinking too much now, it's not just a hangover. Like I get anxiety. Like I'm just not my best self.
Yeah.
So I appreciate those type of like intentional changes in your body as you get older. Also, like you need all, like you said, you need all your brains. I've done a lot to my body.
I think people are trying to figure out how to enjoy themselves sober. You know what I mean? I think that's a real big intentional thing for this generation, just kind of moving forward. Like we were sold so many social connections right through drinking.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then the more you drink, the less you remember. And it's kind of like what we're dealing with the internet and online. We're more disconnected. So we'll go to clubs for social disconnection, not real connection.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talk about this all the time because when I used to go out, we didn't bring cameras. I don't even know if I would always even have my phone with me, but you danced, like you talked to people.
It was a vibe.
You had a really good time because you weren't on your phone and you weren't worried about being recorded. So you could just like talk to someone, enjoy yourself, not have the anxiety of like, you know, what the fuck did I do last night? And it's now going out, people just don't talk to each other.
Nah. Now it's just kind of like these groups of men or these groups of women. I kind of remember when it just became like a full divide. You know what I mean? Like women are no longer at the club for men, and it became a narrative, and then guys became weird for trying to talk to them unless they're the exact one a woman is attracted to. You know what I'm saying? And they can't know that unless they try.
Right.
So it became this whole thing where then enter the phone, and now I'm just there to take a couple of selfies and leave. You feel me?
It's really just about proving that you were there more than the experience. And that's what social media does.
And people got burnt out from that. And now I just seen, DDG posted that they charged him $50 for a bottle of water at a club in Houston.
Well, that's the other thing that I think is changing people's habits for socialization because that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like you're not.
That's a scam. That's disrespectful.
It's
it wasn't even the
disrespectful.
good water either. You know what I mean?
Like
it was some cheap
water.
filtered water. That was straight from the sink.
No, it really is great. It's expensive. Like, and you're paying all this money to like hang out with your the friends that you would be hanging out with at home because you're not going to meet new people.
Have you seen people going to like coffee clubs? So they're going into the morning. You got a DJ with some vibes, right? And everybody's drinking coffee instead, or like matchas and tea. You feel me? And that becomes like this alternative experience for this generation that want to experience each other offline.
Well, the offline thing is such an interesting thing to me because obviously you are, you're on the line. Your show is available online, and you interact with people a lot and share your opinions a lot through the internet. And I think the internet has created a lot of positive experiences and connections. I think it's given people who didn't have platforms. I think it's done a lot for social justice. But with anything, there's also a very, very dark side. And to me, I think that communicating with other humans has been the thing that the internet has been one of the things that the internet has really fucked up for me, because one, it's created this level of anonymity where people can say whatever they want. They feel there's never any consequences. And for the most part, there are no consequences for saying whatever you want.
The soft guy becomes a tough guy
immediately. But also there is this true lack of like humanity that is a byproduct of not having consequences. It's like you can just say something horrible to someone and then just go about your day. And it's not, I don't want to use the word bullying, but it is just this real tangible ick, that's disconnected people in a lot of ways.
I think everybody's feeling it, right? There's number one, there's such a large percentage of the internet that's just dead, right? It's just bots and AI and some bullshit. And then there is, I study a lot of cognitive warfare, which is different from like information warfare. Information warfare controls what you think, where cognitive warfare controls how you think, right? So they can literally utilize your own neuroplasticity against you. So you can be looking up something, because most people are lonely, and they say loneliness is equivalent to 15 cigarettes a day, right? So it's extremely unhealthy. So when you're lonely, people drink, people smoke, right? People scroll because they're looking for stimulation, some endorphins, right? But in that pursuit of trying to find yourself, you're in these hubs online. Somebody says something that you connect with, then you go down a rabbit hole. You don't know whether the information is true or false, etc. Then it starts to become your identity, right? So now when somebody presents new information or true information, you're protecting it. You don't know if that was an AI that did that to you. You don't know if that was China. You don't know if that was Russia. You don't know if that was Republicans or Democrats, right? And so the Department of Defense said that this is probably the biggest, most imminent threat, right, to American public. Is because if China, Russia, or any company wants to decide to run a psyop on American people, then they can easily create conflict. But we can't do that to China and Russia because they're not going to be watching our internet.
Right.
So
and they're very particular about it.
And this affects people who going through the most stress, who the loneliest, who have the most mental issues, and who in poverty, right? Because they're seeking something different. So that's where like having like these cognitive rituals and making sure that you're feeling good so you're not seeking something outside of self is where I kind of go into.
What do you think of the male loneliness epidemic?
Why you say epidemic?
We're going to talk about it.
It's a real thing. I got 6 brothers. You understand me? So I can see how, and they all of different ages. So I can see how, right, this new technological cultural age that we're going through has affected them. I can look at my friend groups, I can look at peers, and then I travel around the world speaking to men, and they confide in me of what's going on. Sometimes what they tell me is what they don't tell me at the same time. And I can tell you that the average man, let's say this, just the average man who wants to live and be respected and loved in society, nobody speaks upon the average man as if he's special at all. You understand me? He has to have all of these accreditations, right? He has to make all this money. He has to be a certain height. He has to be a certain type. He has to have all of these things just to be considered in conversation, right? And so it makes him feel invisible, right? And then when he goes to places, he's not treated, just with common decency a lot of times, right? A lot of times he gets blamed for the whole patriarch when he's just trying to get him a donut or something coming into the store. It's like, damn. So I think that amongst that on social media has him comparing himself to unreal expectations. Right? Mentally, financially, and physically. Right? So I think that men are disconnected from themselves. right? Because Hollywood and social media has curated all these ideas of what it means to be a man, right? So a man doesn't even know if he is anymore. Because was it being a man when Hollywood gave me a version of the gangster or the pimp, right? Or, James Bond, right? To certain people. It was all these ideas. If I'm not a drinker or a smoker, or if I'm not a tough guy, it was never like position manhood is like you can be an average intellectual man and you're masculine, and that's enough of being yourself. So I think the loneliness epidemic is real, and that's the most vulnerable population.
So I think there's a lot of layers to it. I think when it's the reason I do the epidemic thing
Because
is
you mean to men.
I am mean to men.
I seen that clip. Don't
I
be
am
mean to men.
I'm really proud of being mean to men, actually. Though.
That's crazy.
I'm not mean to you.
I know, but that's an outlier. You understand me? I don't exist. I'm not a statistic. I'm an anomaly.
Yes, of course.
That's why I say that I champion the average man, because those are the ones who need it. You feel me? I've always had certain privileges in life, right? Just because of the way that I see myself, the way that I think, my ability to communicate, my level of attractiveness, whatever it may be, I feel like I've always had privileges. So I speak outside of myself.
From a woman's perspective, I don't like to speak on what men experience because I'm not a man. I only have my experience with men.
Mm-hmm.
And I have brothers and I have nephews and I have many men in my life and I adore them. I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. This generation of women is one of the most unique generations in history, at least in modern times, because this is truly the first generation of women that have any kind of autonomy over their bodies, over their ability to make money, over their ability to be entrepreneurs. You don't have to have a man to get a credit card. You don't have to get a man's approval to start a business like this. When you are financially independent from men, it creates a different dynamic on the lowest end and the highest end, because there was a time where you had to have a man to have a roof over your head. To exist as a citizen, you had to be with a man, and not just like claimed. You had to be married and then like immediately make children, whether you wanted to be a mother or not, whether you were fit to be a mother or not. Like there are just a lot of things that define women that are not in existence right now in totality. And the connection to men has become a different demand. Now, this is my experience. And the women who are close to me. I'm not speaking for all women. I'm just giving my opinion on what my experiences are and the women who are around me are experiencing, because I talk about it all the time. I literally had a conversation on the way here today with my girlfriend about this. And what I think the disconnect for me and those men is twofold. One, I don't need a man to do anything for me but love me. I can love myself, but I can't love myself in the way that a partner will love you, right? Like love. I don't need you to feed me. I don't need you to put a roof over my head. I need you to protect me, but in the sense that you like protect a partner, not like safety in the world. And I think that's a dynamic that is really difficult for a lot of men, because men were not raised to be interesting. Like you just had to show up and have money, and that was like enough, or show up and be tall, or like be from the right family. And that's just not the case anymore. The other part of it is, I think the propaganda that those men that you're talking about are being fed is that women like me are the reason that they are not happy, which is not true in totality, unless I'm mean to you, of course. I know I just threw a lot at you.
No, I can download that. I don't know if that's what the average man thinks whatsoever. And I think it was an oversimplification of men's existence, right? I think that happens a lot because we polarize things. Nothing is ever simple. Everything is always complex.
There's nuance.
But we never want to think about the complexities, right? This was men's mistake when it comes to women, right? We didn't think about the complexities. We didn't think about her period and menstrual cycles, right? And not having access to pads or days off, right? Things of that nature. We just thought about our experience and what we want from them or what we don't want from them, right? And me as a black man in America, I don't think we've still gotten a generation of black men who have autonomy. Say what you want to do what you want to do, right? Move how you want to move. I was talking to a young lady who works at a prominent black media space. And she was explaining, she said, Keys, I'll be trying to advocate for you to get you awards, to get you honored in certain spaces, but they don't think you're safe enough. And I'm like, why not though? Now, she was telling me that, of course, now they're even more afraid because of Donald Trump. They don't even want to use the word black or diversity, right? So they're trying to figure out, what can we do while continuing to get in white ad dollars, right? So they're gatekeeping, right? So that to me, it's not surprising. I already knew that. She was only confirming something that I knew. But it's like, as a man, there are limitations to what society will accept from you. You understand me? Especially the version of man that you want to be, right? I think the version of man that men ultimately want to be and how we show up, I think this generation minimizes himself consistently, right? As a black man specifically, we've never gotten to the point where the black man is completely free. We're killed for our expression. You know what I mean? We're killed still for being black as we walk down the street, regardless of sexual orientation, class, level, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's one of those things to where when we hear how other people express their ideas upon us, it makes us feel as y'all don't understand the complexity of what we deal with consistently, right? And while at the same time, we're lobbying for empathy towards everybody else, whether you're gay, whether you're a woman or whatever it is, we're like, I don't think you're taking the same time to get agency of thought to what we go through, right? So then it becomes this battle of, if you don't care about me, why should I care about you? Right? And then this becomes divisive because we're talking at rather to each other. And then we talk to the women we like or we talk to the men we like, but what about the average man? He has feelings, ideas, he grew up a certain way. He probably is still trying to figure out whether he's a tough man, a real man, a high-level man, a high-value man. He don't know. It's all of these expectations that society is saying that a man is not living up to. Mm-hmm. But what about the ones that he is living up to? Because our parents still went with the average man, right? He didn't have to have all of these great things. He might have been a plumber, right? And he had a nice business and he can take care of the average woman who was doing the average things as well. And so for individuals such as yourself who are more anomalies, right? You exist in a certain bracket, a certain class, you travel a certain way. So you really don't speak for the average woman, but the average woman wants you to speak for her. They want to aspire to have those same wants, desires, privileges, right? But they don't, right? The average woman, black woman specifically, is in debt. You know what I mean? With even more debt than the average black man, right? Between the years of 1976 and 2011, there was an incline in black men going to college. It fell off during the Obama administration. Why? Because net income didn't rise because you got out of college with a degree but no opportunities, right? So you increased in debt and it decreased your belief and it started to create this nihilistic thinking about your world. Like, I'm living and existing in somebody else's world, and even when I do what they tell me to do, I still don't get the privilege. And then upon that, you have all of these shifts happening between white supremacy and George Floyd and Mike Brown, and now the world acts like they care about black men when we get killed, but there's still really never been any change for men, black men specifically, right? And then that became more of a societal-wide idea of men. So that disconnection actually made them easier to psyop. So now somebody say, okay, well, you're not being taken care of over there and you keep voting this way or you keep going this way. How about you come with me? You understand me? Because we got the same enemy. So now you're going to see political, ideological shifts. People speaking towards the issues that men go through, right? While another side is saying, ignore your issues, fight for these. But these people are going through a cognitive decline. Black men, suicide rate consistently increases. We're not a suicidal type of people. Depression rates consistently increase. Anxiety. I hear black men telling me, I ain't never had anxiety before. It feels foreign to them. But they're experiencing anxiety for the first time, and these are very resilient men. I think more men, we tend not to communicate, not because a lot of times we don't know how, we just don't think people care when we do, right? So instead of listened to, we're challenged. Right. And so I think that makes a lot of people say, you know what, I'm going to just do what I want to do. And now we exist in a time where men have more desires than ever as well because you have more options. But more options is its own kind of slavery because when you have too many choices, you can't make a good decision. And the more desires there are, the more discipline you need. Right. But you need more discipline in a time where it's trying to consistently sell you overstimulation. So the entire environment is not set up for men or women to connect with each other, empathize, understand. Again, it's the reason I'd rather have us talking over coffee than liquor. You understand me? Because we might actually get to a place of understanding.
Do you think that people are too far gone though? Because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, sure, you and I are outliers, and we shouldn't, in some ways, I shouldn't be speaking for people who have a different experience than me. But I say all the time, like, I'm an outlier for a bunch of different reasons, not just because of my job. And I don't think people are like, oh, like who are you giving advice to? Like, it's not advice. Unless I explicitly say I'm giving you advice, I'm actually not. Because I don't think it's fair to skew things in that way. And in a lot of what I think is happening with men online is this idea that, like, part of it is the idea that, like, women and modern women and feminism is keeping them from the women that they deserve to be with. It's like the OnlyFans, influence of, like, okay, I can now.
You think you deserve to be on OnlyFans? You already messed up.
Well, yeah, but this is. I mean, women are not funding OnlyFans like men are. So there's
a two-way business.
Sure, but I am not subscribing to anyone's OnlyFans.
Yeah, neither am I.
Okay, you are not either, but we know the statistics of OnlyFans is millions of men. Like, the reason that the OnlyFans women are on OnlyFans is because men are paying.
Yeah, millions of, like, lonely men and who have fetishes and all these other weird things, and there's an industry for everything.
Sure, and I'm not a judger of the sex industry at all. It's always existed, so it's not. It's just evolved.
Are you a champion for it?
I think you should have autonomy over your body. I think if you want to sell your body, you should be able to do that in a consensual space. And I also think that for many parts of history, it was a very, I don't want to say essential part, but, like, it's prostitution and the exchange of, like, sex and money has existed since humans have existed. It's like one of the oldest occupations. So I think it's a very complex conversation. And I actually believe that OnlyFans has created a space for a lot of women to become financially independent, and they aren't physically in unsafe scenarios where in the past they would have been if they were in that business.
Yeah, I think it goes more into a mentally unsafe because a lot of people stop liking themselves.
Sure. And that's a whole,
but
that's a whole other thing.
It's holistic. It's all connected, right? I think the man who's lonely, trying to find himself and, looking at OnlyFans, trying to connect and get some stimulation, right? The girl who's disconnected from the world, right? Willing to disconnect from this moment of selling her body. They're essentially kind of going through the same thing, right? And at the end of the day, men and women are the only beings that exist on the planet Earth. It's just us. You know what I mean? I know people love their animals and stuff, but it's just us, just men and women. I think when you get to a simple thing, we have to get along. As beyond our politics, our ideologies, philosophies, etc. It's just us as human beings figuring out.
So how do we fix
how the hell to get along?
Because we're talking around whatever the issue is, and it's a very complex thing.
No.
But the reason I bring up that OnlyFans thing is, like, are we too far gone? Because
nah, that just represented a certain moral decline in society that happened on purpose, right? You disappear values and people do whatever comes to mind, right?
So what's your fix?
That's the idea of Satanism, is do as thou will, not God's will, right? The fix, number one, I would start with media. You know what I mean? Media has such a powerful ability to storytell and narrate what people believe, right? They say you got to get it to a point of like 68% of awareness of a problem before you start making a shift. Once you do that, you can kind of lobby for things to happen, et cetera. And so, number one, again, the reason we do, like, even the tour spaces that we curate is so it creates connection. I was talking to a lady at Source, and she was asking me the exact same questions. And I'm like, look around. You're talking to me about gender wars, right? That's an online phenomenon that happens more. But offline, it was all these black men talking to black women, having amazing conversations and enjoying each other. Most likely, especially because online is so toxic and they're always going at each other. So it feels good to just connect to another human being, right? And we need to create a culture that is specifically about connection, right? Connection and conversation, but also curation, right, of better ideas. But it's hard to do that because most of the media companies sell out. They sell out to advertisers who want you to have a certain demographic that they can sell loneliness to through liquor, through lottery, through, gambling or through marijuana, all these things that not really creating connection, but allowing you to put a Band-Aid on the fact that you don't have any. You know what I mean? So I believe it's a cultural shift, which is what we focus on in the first place, right? Then it's a implementation of values. What do you believe in? What do I believe in? Do we even know? Right? When I was in Japan, the one thing I like about that is, there's an overall theme of Bushido, which is like the warrior's code, right? Which come from like shoguns and samurais and wisdom, right? That is embedded in the fabric of that culture. If you try to get everybody, you go lose, right? But can you create a specific culture of people who have the same values? One of the most nostalgic points in time, where I look at it like a renaissance instead of a revolution, there was points in time we did get along. I think we color history as super gray. You understand me? But there was time where black men and women were really enjoying each other's company, right? We're building, was fighting the right enemy together. And the enemy wasn't each other, right? And the problem is we allowed the enemy to make us each other's enemy. And that only serves them. It doesn't serve women. It doesn't serve men. Because women's quality of life has not increased. Men's quality of life has not increased. The elite's quality of life has increased, right? Because now we need more makeup, we need more liquor, we need more trips, we need more girls' trips, we need more purses, you need more everything to make up for the lack of what you have inside or the connections that you have socially, right? What cognitive behavioral therapy replaced community, right? So you will go to grandma or sister or friends and have conversation that remind you who you are. It reminds you of your power. Now everybody's looking for themselves being lost. I don't believe in finding yourself. I believe reminding yourself, right? And our culture needs a reminder of who we are, but we tell stories of the past as if it was all bad. You go into history and you highlight the cultural memories, right? Because if we talking about culture, my definition of culture is consciousness and motion, and there is a complexity of things that make that. If we say, what are our cultural memories that we have together? We probably go yesterday or day before yesterday, anniversary of Black Wall Street, right? Tulsa bombing. That's one thing. Then most of these are traumatic things. Black people dying, we're not getting along. These are like our cultural memories. So if you think about a person and you sitting down and you asking them, what are your core memories? And they're all traumatic. That's a very low consciousness, right? So I look at culture as this consciousness, as this complexity in our music, our media, our economics, our spirituality, our fashion, right? All of these things, and we can grade the health of each one to say whether they're healthy or unhealthy, whether they're high or low. And if you focus on attacking each, and I think that's where media plays a part in what they call strategic imagination, right? Futurism, right? Or reframing what the past was, right? Why was that man over drinking, right? Why did he connect that to himself in the first place? You start reframing, then we start understanding, then we start moving forward. Or futurism, placing us in the future to where we have something to look forward to. So again, I believe that when we're utilizing media, if we're utilizing to circulate the same conversation, then we're adding to the memory of cultural trauma. But if we're utilizing to project aspiration, right, now people are placing themselves into a future that's alternative to the one they live in. They start looking for it. Then they start looking for it, they start seeing it. Right? We have a RAS, a reticular activation system, thing we think about, we find, we expand, we maximize. So we can talk about the man we don't like or the woman that we don't like, but what about the one we do? What about the one we want to see more of? And then men will be like, damn, if I become that, maybe I'll get rewarded, right? So therefore, they seek to become that because we only do things based off two reasons, reward or punishment. If I'm rewarded for being an asshole in the algorithm, I'm going to be an asshole. There's also a way I can make money. Right? And so I believe capitalism has really took a hold of most people because they can espouse opinion they don't really believe, but they know it's going to be good rage bait. It's going to be good clickbait. And they're going to monetize that and they can make a living off of it. So now they're stuck in a cycle, right, of ignorance that's not connected to their values, which only actually makes them more depressed. When you live with your values, that's when you have joy. Pun intended. You know what I'm talking about? I had to land that one on that one. You feel me?
You did. What do you think the connection to spirituality in all of this is? Because you're a very spiritual person. I would say I think I used to be more spiritual than I am now. I've actually found myself in like a really interesting place where I don't have a lot of connection to anything spiritual. And I can feel a lack of spiritual like connection in myself. And I think it's like pouring over into other areas of my I'm gonna say my personality, but like you talk a lot about values and you talk a lot about like your spirit. And I think that that's something that is also very devoid in a lot of things that we do, not just relationships. Obviously, there's so much in life like business, you know, what your political opinions are, how you just treat other people, how you raise your kids. Like it's more than just relationships, which, you know, we like to talk about because it's something that kind of in a lot of ways we all experience. Like we're not all entrepreneurs. We don't all, you know, become parents, but we do all have relationships in some way with, you know, with romance. But I think it's bigger than that to me. I think there's like a real lack of spirituality in things. And I personally, I was raised Baptist, and organized religion is like, I just have no time for in this current society, because I feel like the reps of all these sets are terrible. Like they're not consistent. And I really struggle with finding connection in something, in a religion or like faith base that has been used throughout history to abuse people.
Mm. I think that's a very nihilistic viewpoint. But I think that thing can be said almost about anything.
Yeah, I know, like lots of things get corrupted. I hear you.
But I think a lot of
But speak to the spirituality rather than the religion of it.
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. For me, spirituality is breath. You understand me? Like, Honorable Elijah Muhammad once said that if you choke a man, right, his spirit is like a flame. He don't have access to oxygen, right? It's the only thing he's going to need. You choke out his spirit, right? Spirit has been known as ka or chi, right? It's unseen, but it's the connection to all things, right? And I think that what religion tried to do, especially in the beginnings, will give man order with that spirituality, how to live, right? You can look at living in connection with the seasons as spiritual, right? Where you look at ancient peoples and they had built pyramids and temples, and they would always be aligned with cosmological order and stars. It's because they knew that if they was living with that, then they can build with agriculture, right? They can build a space to where it's not about constant generation, but regeneration, right? How do you maintain your peace and keep regenerating it? Not that you have to keep seeking and doing things for it, but you're just living in this harmony and flow. And I think we have a society that focuses on balance, which is tension between 2 points. And we get used to that tension. You understand me? It makes us feel purposeful, the fact that we can actually balance life like that. But when you live in harmony, you know when to rest. You know when to be energized. You know when to deal with things when you have capacity. And I think at a high level of spirituality, you have these rituals that allow you to stay in flow, right? To where if you meet a deeply spiritual person, they're not doing that much to maintain, but they're doing the right things that are consistent, right? And so it goes into your psyche of who you are. A deeply spiritual person is not focused on domination. They focus on cultivation, right? They live similar to how nature lives, right? A nature doesn't have to overthink things. They just live in the flow with the harmony of nature. And when something is off rhythm, that's when they're off, right? So if a plant is not getting enough sun, then it can't grow. And then there's a disruption in that nature. So at a higher level, it's beyond survival, right? It's when you're able to live in flow and harmony with life cycles and universal cycles, which is called cosmism. But we're in the news cycle, not cosmic cycles, right? We don't know besides astrology a lot of times, but before astrology, it was astronomy, right? We would know that the sun is about to go through a certain peak in July, which is going to happen. And they show that there's more electromagnetic activity to the earth. So sometimes people will fast when there's full moons, because they know there has the tides have a pull on their heart or their cerebral brain fluid, which affects their mood. So now if I'm fasting, right, I'm more in control of myself. I'm being more intentional during those times. The problem what we have today is we have so much information. It makes people feel like they know something that they don't. We used to just have leaders who knew, and people would take them as shamans or guides or wise ones. And so religion at its core was meant to give man order, right? Hey, pray 5 times a day, which is in connection to the sun salutations and cycles with the sun, right? Eat only certain times a day. During this time, fast, because men and women weren't that sophisticated. treat women this type of way, right? And here's the reason why. Let me give you more reasons why. So it's not a simple reason that you disconnect from. It's complex enough that you develop a level of consciousness, right? So I think what's happened with spirituality is that it was so oversimplified and it was undefined that people didn't have enough reasons to stay connected. And so this is actually leading people back to temples and churches because they're looking for that social connection. They want to be led. They say, no, tell me when to pay my tithes. Tell me when to pray. Tell me what these things mean because I don't have time to read, right? And so this is always a cycle that humanity is going to look for, right? Until we get to a place where the way we live is our religion. But we live in a world where it's so diverse. Everybody has a different belief or meaning of God. So I typically, before I tell somebody whether I'm a Muslim, I ask, what's your definition of it, right? What's your definition of spirituality? I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. Nowadays, your chat GPT could have told you something different. I don't know, right? They have an anomaly with chat GPT where it's making people feel like they're spiritual gurus and that they're special because it's validating ideas that they're going down a rabbit hole for, right? And so we're going into a very dangerous way where now like AI has become this new entity in the world and people are going to utilize it as a god because that AI is going to tell them how to live in order. It's going to be their emotional therapist. It's going to be there to console them. It's going to explain, right, religion and spirituality for them.
They're developing a relationship with it.
Yeah, but I think spirituality at this core level, right, is a relationship with self and how you live in a rhythm and flow.
You're so good. That was so good.
Oh, thank you. It's the supermind.
It's the coffee. I guess like it's not even a retort because I agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, what you're saying is ancient in its existence anyway. But like, people always corrupt everything.
Yeah, it's the nature of man and woman. Yeah.
And then it's up to you to like decide how to live within that corruption while still following that religion or those guides. Like fundamentally treating people a certain way or treating your family a certain way or having discipline over your body, all the things that you just said are essential to living like a balanced, healthy life. But then you throw in the rules and it's like, okay, but you can't do this or hell, or this person can't have this right or hell. And then it just devolves into like justifying slavery.
Yeah, I think there's different interpretations throughout time. Like in Islam, we call it Islam, right? When you're using it for your own purpose.
Right.
But I've learned a long time ago, because I grew up in spaces to where I seen men that were corrupt, right? Very close. I seen the reason why organizations fail. And I learned the power of discernment. I learned to disconnect the message from the messenger. You know what I mean? If you have a math teacher who is a great mathematician, but he's a pedophile, does it change the fact that he taught you about equations and math and geometry, right? No. You were completely disconnected from him because you know it's a pre-existing system that has nothing to do with the morals of the man, right? And so with religion, we personalize it a lot of times to the people connected to it. But it had nothing to do with this individual. It's just so much power in it. When you could become the one to lead somebody, you can lead them astray or you can lead them in the right direction. And people are much easier led in the wrong direction, right? And so, again, going back to discipline is freedom, right? When we can organize our lives, we feel a lot better. We don't like chaos, right? I was always taught the first order of the universe is motion, right? Which is more like feminine energy, right? Then the second law is order, which is more like masculine energy, right? Cycles, patterns, rhythms, right? But today's society just wants to flow in motion. Everybody talking about how they got motion. They ain't got no order. Moment you get order, you systemize life and then you start developing success. And so this is why a lot of times some of the most successful people are like psychopaths because they're not caught up in the motion of nothing. They can create chaos when being completely disconnected from it while creating systems that benefit from that chaos, right? It's the same thing with papal bulls from the Catholic Church, right? They understood how to utilize religion as a very powerful system to control and literally, by their own words, own the world, right? And to this day, they still operate like that. And so I think that an individual, and we look at the time we live in, and I think time is one of the biggest connecting factors to people. The fact that we're living and experiencing life at the same time is what connects us. I think that's beyond race. I think that's beyond social classes, sex, anything. I think time is the biggest connection that people have. we're experiencing a time on earth that's unlike any other, right? Where you literally can pull any imagination out your head and do anything that you want. But do you have the cognitive clarity to do so? Most people don't, right? You give people billion-dollar tours and we say, okay, do what you want to do now. And they don't have creativity no more because the world drowned them out, right? So now they're burnt out from even thinking, right? So again, now they're searching for some order to restore that spirit within them, that reason to move, right? That energy that they have. And then your soul is, those your values, right? When you speak from a place of values, you can never be lost. You can take losses, but you'll never be lost, right? Because all you gotta do is go back to your values and self-correct. Like, then that's when you remind yourself, like, that's what happened to me. It's not who I am. You feel me? And then that's when you continue to move. And then I would say like belief in something is necessary for a person that's being initiated into an understanding. So you have to believe it before you know it, right? If I've never seen the sun and you told me it exists because I was born in a cave, I would have to believe in it. But then once I walk outside, I no longer have to believe. I can see the sun every day. Now it's something that I know. Man goes through iterations from belief, right, to information, to knowledge, to wisdom, then understanding. And understanding is at the highest level because that means that Minister Farrakhan once said, he said, I'm a Muslim, but I also read the Bible. He said, I'm a Christian too. He said, y'all Muslims and Christians warring with each other. He said, if you truly follow the word of God, you see God in all things. And I'm paraphrasing. But I think about that as understanding. When you truly understand God, right, or religion or spirituality, it don't need to look a certain way for you to recognize it. Mm-hmm. My father could be in disguise. I still gonna know who he is. You feel me? And so we haven't got to that point where wisdom guides society. Right now, information is guiding society and they don't have discernment.
Well, that's a good segue to what I was going to ask you, because I think in some ways, fundamentally, we have access to so much information that people think they know things they do not know.
Yeah, it's a problem.
And to me, I'm going to butcher this quote, and I can't remember which philosopher said it, but it's basically like the theory is like, I know that I know nothing. Mm-hmm. And I say that all the time. It's important to remain curious, but it's also important to understand that you know a whole lot about this. I know a whole lot about this. But in the scope of things there is to know in the universe, we know nothing. Mm-hmm. And you are someone who reads, you are an intellectual, like you care about learning new things, you care about having conversations, as do I. And if something new is introduced to me, I'm going to explore this new thing and then make a logical and intelligent decision about what I'm going to do with that information. And if that information conflicts with something that I thought I already knew, but this is a fact, I have to introduce that fact into my existence. Mm-hmm. I cannot be like, I believe this, even though this fact is in front of me. And people get so far into their little corners of the world because they feel safe there and they feel a connection there, that they will just continue to justify whatever it is that they're doing, even though they are being presented with facts. And some things are just facts. The idea that everything needs to be debated is like, there's no debate about these things. These things we have to agree are fundamental facts, period. And the fact that there is so much conversation about everything, it allows people the idea to think that things that are not real are real.
I think it's the fact that there's not enough high-level conversations about things, right?
But in a time of anti-intellectualism, how do you get people to have high-level conversations?
Well, I think
which is a plug for his show.
Yeah, you first start with people who are qualified to have them, right? And I think that as like this new generation, this is like the post-thinking era is gonna happen when people don't have to think for themselves. Their AI does all the thinking for them. The problem is, like, I'm seeing a lot of what I call scripted scholars, right? They're going to be really good online in 60-second or 5-minute clips because AI is going to give them a really good script and a way to say it. Typically, a person had to actually be really good at communicating and researching to get that. But now the AI is NBA level, right? So now it's going to give you a script to say on a point, an idea you want to make. That person is going to say it. And then it's going to be the rise of like the average intellectual, right? Mm. And so it's going to be interesting how things go. My brother Red Pill once said, he said, you know, AI is like the BBL for non-intellectuals. Straight up. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that.
There are some good BBLs though. Like
no, it's a lot. No,
like
I don't think it's
hard to tell.
I'm not mad at
The thighs are not going to match for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to see, and I don't think it's going to be a particularly bad thing because it's going to allow the cream to rise to the top, right? And I think it's actually going to position people who are qualified, right, to have a louder voice.
You're such an optimist.
No, I'm only saying it because it's what I see. You understand me? I'm seeing in these social media streets, right? I'm seeing scientists and scholars and intellectuals starting to grow their platform because people are looking for trusted sources. People that at first, because they wasn't cool, nobody would listen to them, right? But now they can say, I'm a doctor, I'm a neuroscientist, right? I got this many degrees, listen to me for this reason. They're establishing authority, right? Then they're speaking, and their platforms are booming right now. I mean, they booming. You feel me? So it's not that I am an optimist, and sometimes I hate being an optimist because when
we need optimists.
Well, I only say that because
I am not an optimist.
When I get pessimistic, I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself.
Because that's naturally who you are. I don't think I'm actually a pessimist. I think I like to consider myself a realist, although I've been told many times that I'm a pessimist. But when I am in the presence of a true optimist, I realize how much of a pessimist I am.
I grew up with a lot of optimists, pessimists. So it gives me a back and forth. But again, that whole intellect thing, I think we're going to get to a really interesting space where like intelligence won't even be the value. Because we got so many intelligent systems, right? It's going to be creativity and wisdom and discernment and values that people start looking for, right? I talk about AI like the last 10 years. And I remember once telling people that like storytelling is going to be really big in the age of AI. And people only think about storytelling in like one dimension of like literally being an orator and telling a story. But it's also how you share the story of your brand. Right? The world that you build, why you're doing it, right? And people connect to stories because they find archetypes in them. They find themselves in it, right? They connect to the emotions of it. It's something that, an AI doesn't provide us with that level of connection as another human being being able to do it because we also still like the ability to do it, the gift itself, right? And so storytelling is a very key and human thing to do. Men will gather around. That's another thing about men have been like narrated and reframed so many times of what it means to be a man because a tough warrior was always intellectual, right? He would sit around, he'd be the one giving everybody wisdom around the fire. You feel me? Like if you go to, whether you go to Africa or Japan or whatever, these were like the wisest people. They knew how to balance darkness and light. They was really dark when they was dark, right? They'd chop your head off and they'd stimulate your mind at the same time. You feel me? And today's man picks one or the other, right? And I think what we're going to see is this rise of the Renaissance man, right? Where men are going to be trying to focus on like this self-awakening and showcasing their intellect, right? And their knowledge of the sciences and that they can be cultured about art and have these conversations, which is what I would love to see, right? And it's basically just reframing and reconnecting to what original masculinity was, right? What originally rose, because there was a time where they didn't have to narrate what it was. It was just the cream rising to the top.
Ugh, I can't agree with you more. I fundamentally think this is like the issue. It's why I said it at the beginning about like the loneliness epidemic. But I just think that there's so much visually available to people. And we have these measurements of likes and views and comments that give us this kind of stimulation of approval for mostly bots and like, it really amounts to nothingness, but it is monetized. So it isn't nothing anymore.
Yes, capitalism, survival.
So there's this constant feed of like, this is what you need to look like. Like the amount of times I've been told I need to get a BBL is crazy to me.
That's wild.
I don't know.
Who's
crazy
telling
to me.
You this?
What? Like so many people. I'm not getting a BBL. I'm not getting a BBL.
It?
I'm not risking my life for ass. It's crazy.
But how much did you consider? What percentage?
0%. 0%. I'm not getting a BBL. I'm not going to go under the knife for an ass. I've been doing great. I'm doing so good. I've not had an ass my whole life. I'm doing fine. I'm cruising through this thing.
It's just a muscle. You can get one.
It's okay. We're losing track.
I'm not saying you don't have one.
We're getting sidetracked. The point is.
But I'm just saying it's available to everybody.
I should not have brought up the BBL part. The point is, we are constantly being fed these archetypes of like, what is attractive? What is a man? what is an alpha man? What is a successful man? What's a successful woman? What's a successful marriage? What's a successful business? What's a successful career? What do you dress like? What's your watch like? Like we're being fed this because of capitalism to buy this, to buy a BBL, to buy the watch, to do all these things. And there was a time where like maybe you saw one bad bitch your whole life. Like, cause she just happened to pass through. Right. And you just remembered her. Like there was not this paralyzation of options that you think you have or access that you think you have. And like,
I guess it depends on where you lived.
Sure, but a lot of people.
If you was like in Ethiopia, it was just a civilization of them.
Sure. But maybe you lived in a small village and you didn't leave. Okay?
No, if you heard about them, you going. Check it out. You about to scroll through.
You didn't have IG in your village, so like you maybe just had to believe that these.
Oh yeah,
existed.
they would tell stories.
It was like the sun, right?
That's why men started traveling in the first place.
The point is, the idea of masculinity, I think, is framed in all of these really weird ways. And to your point, a true like masculine man had all of these different elements.
Yeah, he was complex.
He was a complex person and respected for that. And you had to earn it. You had to earn that respect. It was earned. And this idea that you can just peck away on your computer and talk shit to people and then like buy this fine ass OnlyFans pussy and then walk out in the world and be like, I'm an alpha man. Like, no, you were never getting none of this. You were never the warrior. And there was a time where if you weren't the warrior, if you walked into the chief's, crib and was like, I want your virgin daughter, they would behead you for even having the audacity. Like you didn't earn it. And there's a lot of things that aren't earned, like ass, sometimes you have to get a BBL. You can't do the squats to get it. But everything can kind of be purchased and positioned. And because of that, it's really hard for people to define themselves without those things if they don't have them.
Yeah. There was a time, like, first of all, the conversation shifted to like alpha, beta, right? And there was never just two type of men, right? There's like the Sigma as well, where he could be like the lonely, you feel me, that don't need to be the one that's in front of the crowd, but also respected, right? And formidable and not to be challenged, right? It's kind of like the archetype of Wolverine, right? There's certain like characters and cartoons we like because those archetypes resonate with us. It has nothing to do with his powers. It has everything to do with him. You can be a part of the group, but then go on your own when you want to, right? You'll listen when you need to, but you always have your own mind. And anytime this thing goes against my values, I'm going my own way. You feel me? And so you never needed to actually be the one that was the leader, but you was respected equally. Right? That's an archetype that men can see themselves in to where it creates more harmony in society. But the alpha means you always have to challenge. You always have to fight, right? It creates this primate council of men. Instead of ones that counseling within each other, or when things go too toxic, you just leave and go your own way.
Right. Everyone's not going to be an alpha.
Right. You don't need to be. You know what I mean? I think that you can switch from, and again, there's these complexities that exist. We act like at one moment you alpha forever. It's not true. Sometimes you might be beta in a situation, but more so that's just humility. Maybe you want to learn from somebody else. And so what it did is restricted men from being able to flow. Right? So in this situation, maybe I just want to be a helper. Maybe I want to assist. Maybe I want to take orders. I think this is a good general for this situation. I don't want to have to lead all the time, but that doesn't make me less of a man. It makes me more because I know myself and what to do in every situation, right? That's when men can move with flow, but that's when you have wisdoms and elders. Again, I think Hollywood and media did so much to destroy what masculinity and femininity was. Right? They wanted to sell women cigarettes, so they connected it to social movements, right? And we let so much of propagandists, right, and social scientists decide who we are. And we really invested into ideas that they created and sold us. And now we're trying to figure out why we're not getting along, because they socially engineered who we are. And these things were never to flow together. It was always to sell a product. So now we're trying to get back to our original self. Right? And that original self is something we're going to find. It happens because life is existing in cycles, right? We're thinking we're so far ahead. We're just in a cycle. That's all. Well, we lose ourselves and refine ourselves. And in that refining, we go through that level of, okay, this is why I always had these thoughts, but we didn't talk about it, so therefore it never became mainstream. Thing doesn't have to, this idea of balance, again, I don't believe in it. I believe in like, when something becomes the dominant in society, it may be 60%, 55, 70. It's like every rapper don't need to be Talib Kweli or Common. But it does need to dominate. So therefore, it becomes the culture normative instead of these outliers. We don't need Kendrick Lamar as an outlier. We need that to be the baseline, right? And so when we get somebody else that's negative, that's the outlier. You understand me? And so
life imitates art.
But see, art should strategically, I think, push aspiration, right? There goes the famous interview with Lara Cohen on Breakfast Club telling them that the Run DMC was selling. They was working at a time. But he said they were aspirational. So he'd rather get drug dealers because that was easier to sell, right? Criminality was easier to sell because lower forms of things like selling candy versus selling some mushroom coffee, right? Or a shot of liquor versus, hey, stimulating, clear your mind, right? We tend to be easily distracted and go into a negative direction, but typically when we're feeling low. Mm-hmm. And then we get addicted to those things. So aspiration, meaning becoming more. People stop wanting to become more, right? And then that took over design of all society, right? We live in a less colorful world, right? We live in a world where it's not as fanciful anymore. There's a brutalism, a minimalism, and everything now. People are not seeking God no more. You go to a church, it used to be this beautiful mausoleum with sacred geometry everywhere because it was trying to connect to this sense of self, this divineness, this sublimeness. And that disappeared, right? So again, we've been thrown into check boxes and we're trying to figure out how to fit in these boxes. And I live as if the box don't exist.
Maybe you can save us, Keys.
Gotta say yourself.
You never give in to me. I'm always doing this with him.
Well, that's the tour, though, the Save Yourself tour. Because we want to empower people to feel like they have what it takes.
They do. They do. You are the optimists that we need. People shouldn't listen to me. I'm a huge pessimist. But I'm speaking from it's too personal. I'm just speaking from my current experience. But I do think that human connection is perhaps the biggest issue that we all have because we are in the most connected time. There's so many different ways we can reach each other, but we're not actually having the conversations or the vulnerability that's necessary to be a really functioning society. Mm-hmm. So thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you for
These
having
are my
me.
Mushrooms, right?
Yes.
Not the psychedelic mushrooms. Where can everybody get this?
They can go to asupermind.com.
asupermind.com.
So we got the chocolates, the cacao, we have the tinctures, we also have the gummies, and we have a lot of products to come. But again, this is all cognitive rituals so you can be successful daily. We want people to have daily clarity.
So you recommend it in the morning?
Yes. At least 2 cups a day.
2 cups a day. I'm going to try it. Thank you for bringing it by. Check out High Level Conversations, and everyone can follow you at 19 Keys.
Yes.
On social media. We're expecting you to have very elaborate conversations and not do the dumb shit that everyone does online.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't do it if I wanted to. I'm just not that dumb.
Thanks for coming by. All right, love that conversation with 19 Keys. Make sure you go follow him at 19_Keys. It's time for Never Too Personal. This week we had someone respond to our IG story and they asked, how do I stop letting situationships take up my girlfriend's energy? Great question. If you want to participate in Never Too Personal, you can email us toopersonalpodcast@gmail.com or respond to our IG story at @toopersonalshow. How do I stop letting situationships take up my girlfriend energy? I think this is something that a lot of women deal with. I'll speak just to women because she's obviously asking about girlfriend energy and not boyfriend energy. So situationships are pretty simple, really. One person is comfortable taking up another person's time, and the person whose time is being taken up is not willing to put their foot down on their time being wasted. I do think that there is a period of time where you're getting to know someone and you're getting acclimated to what they do and, what their schedule is and what they're interested in and, just the process of early dating where you need to show a little bit of what you would be like as a girlfriend, but not go all the way because they haven't earned that. So there is a balance to giving a bit of yourself, being vulnerable, being available, doing nice things for them without jumping right into what you would do as a full-time girlfriend. However, once you reach the point where you feel like you know you want to date someone or not, you just need to ask the question to clarify what it is. And if you're ready to be in a relationship and you're ready to be in a relationship with that person, and that person is like, I don't know if I'm ready for commitment right now, you have your answer. They don't want to be with you. They don't want to be with you. That's it. There's nothing else there's not more girlfriend stuff that you need to do. There's not more time you need to waste. There's not more effort that you need to put in. They're not ready to be with you and they don't want to be with you. Because if they wanted to be with you, they would just say, yeah, let's be together. I like you like me. Let's try and do that. And as a woman, there's not like a rule about saying that or not. I've said that to people before. What are we? It's a very simple question. What do you want to do? Do you want to be in a relationship? Do you not? And then you move based off of what the answer is. I think there's a delicate balance of how much girlfriend energy you give. When you start to feel uncomfortable, just ask the question. Communication is key. I don't think you dive right in. They should be matching your energy as well. You shouldn't be doing everything and they're doing nothing. And you just need to be honest with yourself about if you're doing too much. Like if you feel like you're doing too much, you probably are. And you probably just need to have a conversation with them. So often these situationships happen because we're avoidant to the hard conversations. We don't want to hear someone say that they're not ready to be with us. So you just don't ask the question. And then before you know it, you're in a 6-month, 8-month long situationship and you've completely wasted your time. So you do have to give some girlfriend energy at the beginning of a relationship, but it should be what you're comfortable with. And once you start to feel uncomfortable, just ask the question is my advice. Thanks so much for writing in. Make sure that you follow us on social media at Too Personal Show. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and we'll catch you next week on Too Personal.